Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul Stained Ink. My name is Beth, and I am here today to do a review of Richard Wright's Black Boy. Now, this is Richard Wright's memoir from the time that he was about 4 years old until he's in, I believe, his early 20s. The time in this book is very fluid, and I didn't quite catch all of the ages, and sometimes he would be talking about things that happened and all of these events, and it seems like a span of years is going on, and then he's like, and that was all when I was 7, and you go, really? Seriously? So it was a little jarring at times. However, I enjoyed this book a lot more than Native Son. And you can kind of see where he's getting some of his basic tropes for Native Son, as well as where some of the propellants for the story came from. Now, when he was 4, they lived, I'm not quite sure, a very small town, I believe in Mississippi. And his grandmother was very sick in the house. They were told to be quiet. And so he and his little brother, who's a year or two younger than him, were playing in the front room. And grandma's super sick, right? So they're supposed to be quiet. So Richard is reading a book. His brother's playing with a little toy. And then Richard gets bored and no adults have come in lately. So he's like, let's see what lights on fire. And he starts throwing things into the fireplace. He gets bored with that, and he lights a piece of paper or stick or something on fire and holds that flame to the curtains to see if they're flammable, because he's like 4, and his brother's sitting there going, you oughtn't do that. Mama's gonna be mad at you. Ooh, you're gonna get in trouble. And sure enough, the curtains light on fire. The living room starts to light on fire. Richard leaves his brother, runs out the house, and crawls under the house. Eventually, the fire brigade comes, puts out the fire. Grandma's fine. Everybody in the house is fine. They find Richard. They're amazed and, happy that he's okay. And then they realize he lit the fire and he gets whooped. That is the opening scene to the book. That is also one of the only times throughout this entire book that you see his father. His dad crawls under the house, pulls him out, and that's like the best scene between the two of them that exists in the book and apparently in his life. It's the only time you see his father being really sympathetic toward him. Very soon after that incident, they move to, I want to say Memphis, but that's probably wrong. Memphis plays a big part later in the book. Anyway, they move and find out pretty quickly that dad's job is like a night job, and so they have to be quiet because dad sleeps all day and he can't sleep if the boys are making noise playing, and he gets mean and beats them and whatever. So all of a sudden the boys can play during the day, and like Richard says, he didn't even think about it until they got hungry. And then they find out that dad has had an affair and he's left them. And eventually it gets to the point where mom has a job and they cannot just stay at home alone, or they do stay at home alone, but they don't just stay home because there's nothing to eat other than like bread and water. They're wandering around in the streets playing with the other kids, and Richard starts looking in the door of this local pub, kind of trying to figure out what's going on in there. He gets knocked into the pub one day, and the guys in there think it's hilarious, and they start giving him sips of their beer and rum and what have you, and paying him a nickel to go and say dirty things to the ladies that are there on the other side of the pub. And he becomes a raging alcoholic at the age of 6. It becomes a huge issue. His mom has to pull him out and detox him, and they wind up moving to Jackson, Mississippi with his grandparents. His grandma is a very, very, very hyper-religious woman whose father was white and mother was a slave on the white man's plantation. And so grandma is a white passing Negro because your color comes from your mother, not your father. Um, and she is just hyper religious, hyper aware of the fact that Richard has all these issues, and he says these things and he doesn't even know where he got them from. And instead of working with him and explaining to him that it's inappropriate, they get angry and tell him he's going to hell and beat him, because that is what people in that time frame would do. And it progresses so that he's finally getting enough food, although hunger comes back many times in his life. He's allowed to go to school, he's learning, but then he says these things and, you know, he gets beat, he's in trouble. And then, like, his little brother is this angel, and he's not, because his little brother is content to just kind of play and do what grandma says and go to church. And then mom gets really sick. She has a stroke and she is paralyzed. And every time she gets better, she has another stroke. So throughout the whole book, we have themes of hunger and this harkening back to when he was sick and an alcoholic and getting paid to say naughty things. He won't drink because he's afraid that those things will come back out of him. Every once in a while, he gets angry or super sassy and things will come out. And then he's like, I don't even know where I learned that. He says, I don't even know where I learned that from. And it's just a big deal. The other theme throughout the entire book is that he likes to read, he likes to learn, and he's trying to kind of better himself to get to the point where he can have a really good job and take care of his family. But that's not what black boys do. So, like, he gets a short story published in the newspaper when he's in ninth grade, and his grandma makes him go and get baptized, and his classmates shun him because they don't understand why he would just write a story for funsies. So eventually he gets fed up with it all and goes to Memphis. He runs away from home. He saves up money, steals some things that he can sell. He pawns off and takes this money and goes to Memphis. Eventually he sends for his mother. His mother and brother come and live with him there. And there's just a series of jobs and, you know, white oppression, implicit racism, etc. And he realizes that even though he's always been hungry, always been black, always dealt with this, he was actually very naive and he didn't really understand the way the world worked until then. And then eventually they move to Chicago because going north is safer. And at first, Chicago is amazing, and he is just astounded by the fact that whites and blacks can buy from the same newspaper stand, and the black man doesn't just have to wait for all the whites in line to get done. You just get in line, you buy your newspaper, and you go on. But then he realizes that racism really is everywhere. He joins the Communist Party by no fault of his own. He had friends that were like, hey, they have a newspaper and you can write for them. And for a while, he was allowed to write without being part of the party. But then they voted him into kind of the ruling committee, and he had to sign the yes, I'm a communist thing. And then that kind of spiraled for him. And at the end of the book, they are trying to either force him to stay in the party or leave the party. And you're not really sure which way they're trying to go with it. They offer him a position in Switzerland that you would then go to Russia. And he's like, look, I work for this city for $15 a week to take care of my aunt, my mom, and my brother. I cannot leave them to go. He turns them down. He's been trying to leave the party. And they send somebody else. And I believe he said that that gentleman died in Russia. And he was like, the party is not helping anybody. It's not the way to go about it. I've met some people that are going to be lifelong friends. They're going to turn into these amazing, famous individuals. But the party that we're in now and the way we're going about things now is just not the way it needs to happen. And that's kind of where that book leaves off. There are 3 books in this trilogy of memoirs. But I only read Black Boy. I haven't picked up the other ones. Possibly after this semester is over and I haven't just been immersed in um, book after book, then I might have some time to go back and read the rest. But at least his early years were very interesting. I gave Black Boy a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The discussions we've been having about it in class are very, very interesting and have sparked a lot of ponderings in my brain. I've been looking at like the sociology of racism, how it changes, how the ideas about it change, and kind of what the best ways to work with the system to change the system might be. Um, but that being said, this is still a problem. A lot of the things that were problems when Richard Wright was a boy in the early 1900s are still a problem 100 years later, and that breaks my heart just as much as reading about how hungry he was growing up did. Um, but that is where I'm going to leave you with this review. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that you are staying safe and that you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you again very soon. Bye.